Hello, and welcome to the Domestic Violence Shelter Annual Output Report Overview and Training for fiscal year 2023. My name is Susan Canon, and I'm a program manager with the Victim Service section of the Office of Criminal Justice Programs. Many of you have completed the annual Domestic Violence Shelter Report in past years. And of course, some of you will be completing this report for the very first time. This year's version of the report has been improved upon so that it is clear and hopefully easier to complete. Thank you for your efforts to submit well-vetted and accurate data on outputs, demographics of clients, outcomes, and other requested information. We believe that this year's report and the instructions provided in the actual text of the report are very clear. Please read these instructions carefully. This will ensure that your reporting is accurate and complete. This training will be a walkthrough of the report with the goal of providing some helpful hints for completing the program. And remember that you may call upon your program manager at OCJP if you have any questions as you are completing the report. There are 10 sections of the report, so let's start with the page you see on the screen. This is sort of an introduction and reminder page. So please note the following information from this page. The report is to cover fiscal year 2023, which is July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023. This report is due July 31st, 2023. All DV victims and their dependents that your agency served with shelter services or non-residential domestic violence services are to be reported about, no matter the fund source that paid for the service. This is a comprehensive output report, inclusive of all DV survivors and their dependents served by your agency. This report does not include transitional housing program outputs or transitional housing client data. This report does not include any sexual assault victims or victim services unless those victims were also victims of domestic violence and receiving domestic violence services. In this report, children are persons ages 0 to 17. You will see the short paragraph in the middle of this page. Read this carefully because it provides instructions for working on this report and how you may save it and return to it for completion. In the past, this report required subrecipients to complete the report in one sitting. Make sure you read the instructions, though, for how to do this so that you do not lose any data. If the answer to a question is 0, enter the number 0. And please do not write letters or words into the cells of the report. Let's move on to section 1 of the actual report. And this section is about agency information. The section is basically self-explanatory and provides clear guidance within the questions themselves. The report asks for your agency's name. Please do not list the name of the shelter if the agency name is different. This question is asking for the name of your umbrella organization. It asks for the OCJP contract numbers that supported your DV shelter and non-residential programming over the past fiscal year. It asks for your program manager's name. It asks for the various OCJP fund sources that support your DV program with a menu of possible sources. Choose all that apply. Please provide your website address. And the last question asks for the total dollar amount of all DV funds for FY23 that supported your DV services. Again, this is to include all funds received, not just OCJP dollars. We'll move on to section 2 of the report. This section concerns volunteers. It is pretty self-explanatory. If you'll read the definitions of what the question is asking, both hours worked by volunteers, the number of unduplicated volunteers, and the number of volunteer hours that may have been provided to you for your match. Section 3, we're asking in this section about referral sources for both residential clients and non-residential clients. OCJP knows that your agency probably has multiple referral sources, but this question is only about 2 possible resources for your referrals. We'd like to know about the number of referrals from law enforcement lethality assessment protocol programs, or LAP. This is typically a program that you will do in coordination with your local law enforcement or law enforcement somewhere within the state. And the other referral source possibility that OCJP is requesting information about are referrals that come to you from family justice centers or FJCs throughout the state. Again, OCJP knows that shelter programs have many other referral sources other than lethality assessment protocol programs through law enforcement or FJCs, but please provide only data about those 2 referral sources. Section 4, victim census and demographic data, race, gender, age, special classifications. Please follow the prompts, and you should have no problem throughout this report section. Note that the unknown category for gender is for clients identifying as LGBTQ or transgender, or for those not providing that information. Please note also that under the final question in this section, the special classifications question, we ask about the number of LGBTQ clients served by your agency. Moving on to section 5 of the report. Section 5 is a question about the number of residential clients served and the number of bed nights that were used over the period of 2023 fiscal year. Please read carefully the guidelines found in the first paragraphs of this section. In summary, there are only 2 categories of bed nights. The first is residential clients staying within your shelter facility, or beds, that is, within your shelter facility. And second is hotels, motels, or safe houses. Bed nights, we ask for you to report about bed nights in each of those 2 categories. When asked about the number of beds available within your shelter, do not count cribs. At the end of this section, the report asks for the number of bed nights for youth intimate partner victims, known as YIP. This is for 12 to 17-year-olds who come into shelter, most typically with their guardian, who is a victim, and who they themselves have been victimized by an intimate partner. The youth intimate partner victims' bed nights will be a subsection of the total children's bed nights. Moving on to section 6. This section asks for a variety of things, such as the following: the number of non-residential office sites that your program has. Please read the fine print on this question because it defines non-residential office sites with criteria having to do with the site having well-publicized office hours and as a location known in the community. That is, you cannot simply use the courthouse, for example, as a non-residential service site unless you actually have an established office within the courthouse or some other building within the county government. Also, the number of shelter facilities that are operated by your agency. Most of our programs have one shelter facility, but several do have more than one. Please indicate the number of shelter facilities operated by your agency. We're also asking for the total number of beds that are within your shelter. Again, do not count cribs as a bed within your shelter. The remaining question in this section asks for the unduplicated number of victims and their dependents that were served over the past year under various categories of services listed. Please note, non-residential client services include the same services that shelter victims almost always receive. For example, advocacy services, criminal justice system advocacy, information referral, supportive services such as therapy, safety planning. With this in mind, if a client has received these services and is a shelter client, be sure to report these service outputs. Clients receiving both residential and non-residential services should be categorized as shelter clients, not as non-residential clients. Section 7, supportive services and assistance for residential and non-residential clients. This is your most lengthy section of the report. This section pertains to the total number of times a client has received services, not the total number of clients served. This is the type of reporting that you do for your quarterly VOCA reports, a report that many of you are required to do for VOCA funding. As another reference point, your scope of services in your contracts with OCJP also reflect the projected number of times clients would be served with these services. Again, the question is the actual number of times the services were provided over the past year. Section 8 asks questions about unmet requests for services, for domestic violence services. Please note that the number of clients to report regarding unmet service needs must only be the adult request. Do not include the number of children in this request. For example, if someone calls needing shelter and they have 5 children, that would be one output for unmet request for services. Do not include those who could not be served because the request was from someone who was not eligible for services, not a victim of family violence, intimate partner violence, or dating violence. So unmet requests for services usually means that there has been a capacity problem and that your program could not accommodate the needs of that victim. Going on to section 9 of the report. This section asks about community education, training, and public awareness. Please read the instructions carefully. Each type of community outreach is well defined within the question. That is, definitions are provided for what are community education, training, and public awareness events. Section 10. These are the annual performance narrative report questions. Please answer these questions as completely and as fully as possible. There are 7 narrative questions, and these questions are required to be completed. And finally, this is the certification page where you will certify that your data is accurate and documented, and that provides the date that it's reported. This will be just submitted online. Be sure to make a copy of this report before you submit it so that you will have a PDF of it for your own record. And just make sure that you submit the form. Remember, you can always contact your program manager and ask for assistance with any questions that you might have throughout the process of completing this long report. We appreciate the effort and time and care that you take in completing this report. It's very important for not only our own office use, but also our reporting to the federal funders and state funders who provide support for our domestic violence programming throughout the state of Tennessee. Thank you very much.